Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown, Monday edition. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to go back through all of the action in the British Basketball League this week. And Dave, when we said last week, we'll just do a cursory glance of the European games. We won't spend too long on them. We won't give them the full breakdown. The basketball gods who clearly subscribe and listen to this show went,
Then,
here
oh
you
no, you
go.
will. Oh yes, you will.
Let's host Newcastle in their first game. So
Uh,
let's get to the key decision, the 3-second violation called against Thomas Pavelka in the first quarter.
yeah. There's been one other 3-second violation called across all the BBL games I've seen this week.
Yeah.
It was Josh Sharma last night against Manchester, and he was in the paint for 8.5 seconds for Udansky whistle. Anyway, but beyond that,
the funny thing about it is watching that game back and having seen the call. I didn't watch it live. I was doing a Euro Cup game. Having seen the call on social media, that referee did call a lot of violations. It wasn't out of character with the way he'd ref the game. To be fair.
Just on that, I mean, I was actually more interested in Newcastle's game than London's game because. Not because of Newcastle London, because I know what the level of the Euro Cup is.
Yeah.
You know, we had no real clue about the level of the NABL.
Yeah.
And
ENBL. You've gone back 20 years.
That's right. So
should I set out the European landscape for people who who don't know what all of these different competitions are, first of all? So essentially there are 4 sort of top tier competitions, if you like. 2 are run by FIBA Europe. They are the Basketball Champions League, which Leicester and Caledonia this year and London was it 2 years ago have tried to qualify for, and then the Europe Cup, which is their second tier competition. There is then run by EuroLeague Ventures. There is the EuroLeague, which is the equivalent of the Champions League in football, and the Europe Cup, which is the EuroLeague second tier, Euro Cup, which is the EuroLeague's second tier. And if you want the whole history of it, there's 20 years of politics to unpack, so we won't get into that. But there are a number of other sort of like sub-level competitions to that, where countries, particularly in Eastern Europe, play like little mini regional leagues against against each other. And this presumably is some sort of rehash of what was the NEBL from 20 years ago, the Northern European Basketball League, which broadly speaking was Northern European teams, but without the sort of like key to geography that had, and just allowing anybody in because there's an Israeli team. Gina Crandall's team, randomly enough, assuming they're able to play now with everything going on, that is in that competition. So part of the reason I explain that is this week, EuroLeague Euro Cup started. FIBA Europe Cup was also being played. And obviously those competitions have their own pools of referees. So presumably the great and the good of the refereeing community would be off doing EuroLeague, Euro Cup, or Europe Cup.
Yeah, I mean, the ENBL has a slightly different setup because it's a nascent league. It's clearly trying to hit a niche of teams who aren't quite at the level of that countries, whereby.
And also, it has the thing where the venues, they don't have the restrictions that the other competitions that FIBA and EuroLeague put on.
Yeah.
So Bristol would never be allowed play in a FIBA competition or a EuroLeague competition in that venue.
Yeah, and also you think about like Lithuanian teams, you're going to have Ritas or Kaunas or Žalgiris, who are going to be in the major European competitions every year, and there are some countries where basketball runs deep. Lithuania is probably the biggest of the lot, and some of their mid-level teams clearly wanted to have the opportunity as well to play in the level of European competition. So it is kind of an invitation competition, but in reality, you got to pay the entry fee. If you pay the entry fee and have a situation that they like, then they will have you in. And particularly as our league is kind of declining in numbers, we're at 10 teams at the moment. There's question marks over a couple of them in relation to ownership as well. it may well be that as kind of years go on, more and more teams look to supplement the games with more and more British teams look to supplement the games with competitions such as this. So I was interested in the level of it because we've got an idea of the level of the Europe Cup from when Leicester were in it, and they played some good teams. They played like Surrey, and and they didn't get a win, and it wasn't the strongest team they had that year. But even so, that was a pretty competitive level. So where was the EMBL? And Siauliai are pretty solid. They're they played Guildford back in 2007 in ULEB. So they've got a nice arena.
They have.
So that's a pretty solid kind of mid-level Lithuanian league team. And we certainly when I was recruiting, we had Lithuania was a step above us. You would very rarely get a look at a player who played reasonably well in the Lithuanian league. They wouldn't be coming to Britain. And Newcastle at the moment are probably a mid-level BBL team. They're a new team. They've got certainly high-level BBL talent. They're probably a mid-level BBL team, taking away what's happened after this. So it was interesting to see how they compared. And I thought we kind of stood up quite well as a league, because the team, to go to Lithuania and anywhere and to score 92 is pretty good. So, there was certainly...
And up 19 at one stage.
Up 19. But just on the refereeing thing, the other quirk about the EMBL is that it deals with home and away refs. So there are 2 home refs and 1 away ref.
Yeah.
There's a commissioner who is from somewhere else. So the commissioner in this case was Latvian, which probably explains the statement afterwards. So they do that, and it's all about keeping costs down. So Josh Bow was over there refereeing game from the UK. So it's an interesting concept, and in reality,
it's not dissimilar to what cricket used to do.
No, in reality, I think for both Newcastle and Bristol, it's kind of it's very much a toe in the water. Bristol have aspirations on a big arena. They have obviously they have the backing of Townsend, who's
Lansdowne,
sorry, not Townsend. Lansdowne, who has resources which could be used to expand that. Newcastle are probably the best kind of individually resource club on their own at the moment with the crowds that they've got and the size of the venue that they've got. So there's a opportunity for them to see whether it all stacks up as well. And I think that's what it's all about, just seeing whether it stacks up. And to a certain degree, we don't have a league this year in the BBL. We have a regular season. No comment. No. So this may be the best. This may be one of the best times to actually do it, particularly for the 2 teams that haven't done it before. Leicester, they know how it works. Caledonia are kind of figuring out. They were figuring out how much money they want to throw at it. Bristol and Newcastle get, I think, 7 games, 3 home games, 4 away games. So in theory, manageable. And overall, I thought Siauliai lost their first game in that competition by 20 to a Polish team, and the Poland league is a good league. So it's certainly not indicative that Newcastle might be competitive the rest of the way. Overall, they were up. They competed. They scored the ball with ease, really, at times. But their defense didn't hang up. They couldn't get stops in the 4th quarter. And the thing about the European teams was that they kept doing what they were doing, and they kept doing, and they didn't get too high or too low. And I had fans on the message board say, up 17 should never have lost. That ain't the way it works.
No.
Not if you're in Lithuania and you're playing against teams who are practiced, who are deep, who have size, just going to keep going and going. You got to play every possession, and they didn't quite get there. They could have won the game. As you say, ultimately the call wasn't a great call.
So let's for those who haven't seen it, and if you haven't seen it, it is on social media. It's easy to get. Basically, what happens is there's 30 seconds to go. It's a tied ball game. Newcastle running a bit of time down. Jordan Johnson has the ball, high screen for Delpesh. Siauliai switch it. Delpesh rolls to the basket. He's obviously got a smaller player on his back. He posts up a little bit in the sort of mid-post, sort of high post, mid-post, sort of semi, showing for the ball. He then, whether he got a look from Johnson or whether he just recognized actually Johnson's mismatch is better than my mismatch, I don't know. But he then sort of walks backwards towards the baseline and towards walking out of the key. Now, there is 3 seconds from when he steps in to
well,
when
3.6, I would say.
Yeah.
I would give that. I would
So to the letter of the count, there was just about, but you never see 3 seconds called for 3 seconds. In the 1980s, when you and I were growing up and watching basketball, that was an 80s call. It was 1, 2, 3, bang, 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 3 seconds. But they basically softened the rule over the years to it's sort of like, if the ball goes your way, then they're going to call it after 6 seconds. But if it doesn't, they probably won't. Although, to be fair, that's what happened in the first quarter. I joke about Pavelka, but that was basically what happened, was a similar sort of thing. But the league, as you say, put out a statement the following day with the explanation of the rule. And the rule is written. You don't call a 3 seconds if a player is making his way out of the key. And he was clearly making his way out of the key.
Out by the time the ref called it. The giveaway, unfortunately, was that I felt a little bit sorry for the poor ref, because he blew his whistle and everybody looked at him, and yet he didn't make a call. He didn't actually blow he didn't have his whistle in his mouth and go 3 seconds. He blew his whistle, everybody stopped and looked. And it was almost like, 3 seconds.
Now, my watching back of it the second time around, when I watched the whole game, is the coach is stood right behind him screaming at him. So I didn't know whether that was the Lithuanian for 3 seconds, and maybe that's what drew his eye. I don't know.
My reading of it was that the coach was right behind him screaming at him, telling him that his car was broken down in the parking lot, and the only way that he was getting home was with a lift. It was a lift to it from a friendly Lithuanian compatriot. No, well, whatever. It is what it is. Newcastle gave it 30 points in the fourth quarter. They couldn't get a stop. They shot 29 of 39 from inside the paint, Siauliai. So you lose games like that. You give teams a chance to beat you. You're on the road. You've got to try and take the refs out of it. They didn't.
So just to clarify what happened, Johnson had beaten his man at the point at which the whistle had gone.
It was a layup.
He did go and run a layup. Now, you might say the help stopped because of the whistle. I don't know. He's probably going to score, but he's not definitely going to score.
He hadn't stopped him all night. He had 20
Yeah. And then obviously it's still a tie game, despite the fact the scoreboard operator thought it was a basket and left the 2 points on for Newcastle, adding to the confusion of everything.
BBL, all is forgiven.
British basketball. And then Jonathan Davis hits on the buzzer, and I don't know if the video replay was in another town, but they seem to walk off down the end and take about 15 minutes.
It was comfortably in time, wasn't it? It was actually good defense by Josh Ward, but he just made a tough shot.
Yeah, it was a good shot. It's a good shot.
Made a tough shot.
And therefore, Siauliai win 94-92. So that's the.
Overall, I was a little bit more encouraged than I was a few days later, but I was encouraged that that we have British teams who can comfortably play in that environment against leagues which we've always been told were better than ours. And I think there is a real understanding that for whatever reason that the British Basketball League is slowly climbing the hierarchy. It's not going to falter anybody, but slowly climbing to the hierarchy, to the point whereby, a team from Lithuania would not be expecting to lose to somebody from Britain.
No.
In a competitive game in their own gym.
No.
They would not be expecting that at all. So the fact that there's, we'll see how Bristol do, obviously, and then we'll see how Caledonia do in their Europe Cup games. But the fact that there was even a chance at that actually left me pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. And the issue for the league, and the reason they had to put the statement out the next day, is when you have a domestic referee making a call like that favours the home team, there is the perception of things
you have
going
a foreign
on
commissioner saying that. Well, there is, of course, there is, and also they need to get out ahead of it, because ultimately this is, whether we like it or not, this is a British team's first time in the tournament, both of them. It doesn't take much to just like EuroLeague's looking at the market, just like Eurocup's looking at the market, and Champions League, so is the NBL. They will have aspirations to improve and all that stuff. And the last thing they're going to want to do is to pay off a market like the UK. So the owners are on the phone to each other saying, kangaroo court, no point going there. So overall, I thought actually handled it really quite well. Actually, I thought that was really quite smart move. Ultimately the ref gets thrown under the bus a bit, but the bus was, as I say, parked in the park.
Yeah, indeed. In the other game, London Lions.
I should say I might not have felt quite so blasé about it had I been in Lithuania.
Yeah.
36 hours.
Well, because that's the other thing is there's a dozen of or so Newcastle fans that you could see in shot who've paid presumably a lot of money. It's not an easy place to get to in midweek, and they will have come home feeling their team is sort of cheated out of it. Yeah. In the other game, London Lions 76, Umana and Reyer, Venice 69. They were down by as many as 11 in the third quarter, but Dante Graham inspired a fourth quarter comeback. They won the last quarter 22-13. Important to win your home games because of the change in the format in that competition. Now there's a bit more jeopardy on it.
Isn't it?
Yeah, top 6 out of 10. So the top 6 go through to the playoffs. The top 2 get through to the quarterfinals, and the others play each other in the 8th finals.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, it's important to win most of the games, isn't it? But that team has aspirations to be last 4 of that competition.
So let's go to the domestic basketball and start on Thursday night in East Kilbride, which we haven't said before. Caledonia Gladiators 86, Surrey Scorchers 79. Obviously, new venue, looks really nice. All of the other stuff around the court as well looks really good. Plenty of excitement, big crowd, everybody wanting the home win. Ali Hodgic with the first score in the new venue. Gladiators out to 18-7, and everything looking rosy.
Yeah, just before that, I mean, I'm kind of extending the Johnsonian bus metaphors here. It's really something to be celebrated. You don't get one for years and years, and then 2 come along in the same week. So a credit to the owner, Steve Timoney, and his wife, in getting things done, because we've been around British basketball a long time, and getting things done is not as easy as.
Well, I think the Leicester one was 30 years in the coming.
Yeah, but I was sitting in Newcastle in meetings for Newcastle for 10 or 11. But also, it's pertinent because what have we always said? Probably the most consistent mantra on this nonsense for the last 4 years has been venues. Every time anybody asks me a question about what the British need venues, and we've gone we've gone out and got one, and it'd be wrong just to kind of brush over it and just and not say, what a fantastic job, and it looks very, very fan friendly. It seems to be. I've only seen the footage. I'm disappointed. This is another. I'm afraid it's the old commentators not in the venue for that game. There's so much you could have done for that game, but if you had people, you had Drew there. And his best interview was with somebody in silhouette. So there's so many things you could have done, and I thought it was, we didn't celebrate it enough. And then I'll say the same about the Sheffield thing on Sunday as well when we get to that. It puts a little bit of negativity on the whole London project, that London haven't thought about anything like this. I know London's different. I get that. But there's been no comprehension from anybody in London saying, actually, we want to have our own house, our own place to play.
Presumably, the 14 million in Sheffield and the however many million in Caledonia is 50 million in London.
Presumably it is. I don't know what. I think East Kilbride. I think Play Sport was already a facility. They've not actually put up the bricks and the mortar. They've just transformed it into something.
But the next bit, I think, is being built from.
Well, that's right. And I heard Steve Timmons' interview, and he said, "Well, we're going to have a look and we're going to see." I don't think they're committed to precisely what they know yet, what they want yet. I mean, I think the word was, we're going to have a 6,000-seater gym. I imagine any smart businessman's going to just sit back for about 6 months and see how everything runs before you commit to how many seats you're going to have. And of course, London's more expensive, and of course, London's more difficult. It's not so much that they haven't done it; it's just that there's been a lack of any even comment that might even be something that they might think about doing. That kind of knocks me back a little bit with it. But no, you can't do anything but admire that facility, another facility that we've got, and it was ready. It was great. Mm-hmm. And as you say, they started off very well, and they picked the team who won like 4 games in the first play. But we had to play Dante and Nicholas, Josh Wilshere, with Fab Flournoy and Victor.
The only ones to lose in a brand new Spankley.
Yeah, because why? Vic Moses tweaked his hamstring. Vic Moses played that game because he did his hamstring on the Sunday, but we desperately needed him to play, and he played about 6 minutes and ran down the court in about 6 strides like he normally does. Laid it in and just tweaked his hamstring, and then Fab was already hurt, so we ended up with a younger team playing in that game, and Josh Wilshere.
And they were up for it as well. I was at that game. Plymouth.
Josh Wilshere made a couple of threes at the end, and Dante and Nicholas never stopped. Never stopped. Yeah. He was really good, Dante Nicholas. Anyway, so they picked Surrey, and to be honest, Surrey to start with really struggled, and in Caledonia weren't great, but they got off to they got to the point whereby they put some distance between them and Surrey, and the distance was never really.
They had a bit of a run in the third quarter, got it down to 56-53 after Steele and Lawrence hit threes, but you're right, they didn't ever look like they were going to get in front, and then Justin Robinson hobbled out with 8 minutes to go as well, and it was pretty easy for Caledonia.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, their best, the thing that worried me about Surrey was the amount of players that I say they have a lot of players, and you don't quite know who the guys are that are going to finish the game. Their best basketball was with Lawrence, Steele, and Robinson in the game. 3 guards, and the ball moved a bit quicker. Gooden is going to be, every team's American point guard is important for them. And he's been in and out. He's played some minutes. He's played quite well at times. He's certainly shown that he has the quickness, and the offensive skills to compete in the league, but then he's not playing down the stretch. The same with Wang. Is Wang going to be playing down the stretch or not? I really think they're probably more than anybody else. They need a hierarchy very quickly. And if it means you're only playing 8 and then get eight guys, you play 8 guys. Teo came in this game right at the end, didn't he? And I think he made a 3, and that was it. And he came in this game right at the end, made a 3, that was it. So he's not playing much either. And if you're losing and players aren't playing much, that's hard. They're immediately thinking it's not my fault. Coach is what, he's not playing me. If he played me, we'd win. Now, it doesn't always work like that because players can be somewhat. Players have to have this immense amount of self-confidence. Otherwise, you're never going to be a professional athlete. It'll be a tough thing to be. You have to believe in yourself, even when everybody's pointing at you saying, no, you're not good enough. You have to believe that you are. So they have to sort out. Caledonia still don't convince me at all. The 6 minutes at the end when Dubose was on the bench, and Jovicic had a horrible 6 minutes. Gareth is obviously trying to get him up to speed, and he's willing to play him and let him play through it. But he turned the ball over. He missed, open shots. He threw the ball. I think he threw the ball straight to Robinson to Lawrence at one point, and Surrey's zone almost got them back in the game because the decision making wasn't there. So, I'm still not convinced by Caledonia. They haven't had the most difficult of schedules to start. In the one game, obviously at London, they got well beat. But there is a lot of room for improvement with them. They've got talent there, no question. What we've found actually across the whole league, from what I can see, is that the teams that are playing the most structured basketball are struggling. The teams that are moving, the teams that are running their offenses and being particular, they're struggling, whereas the teams are just basically playing the old Vince ball, the Milton Keynes basketball. The team, Cheshire basically are giving the ball to the point guard and letting them make plays, or giving the ball to Ryan, letting them make plays. Leicester have kind of morphed into that. They're not overthinking anything at the moment. One other team I'm thinking of as well. It's gone. But Cheshire, Leicester, and even Bristol. Bristol have won. They're not great at the moment, but they're looking better when they're doing that. They're having the players do less thinking, because there's so much to take in early in the season. And if you spend a lot of time asking them to run here and run there and do this and do that, maybe they're not concentrating quite as much as putting the ball in the basket or who they should be guarding.
Buttrick with 15 and 10. Ali Hodgic 13 and 12. Paliza 12 points. Lawrence 6 of 8 shooting, 19 points, 9 assists. Robinson 12 points, but off 12 shots, and Hunt 12 as well.
One good thing about the game was Lawrence was the best guard on the court, not comfortably. You know, he looked really smooth, looked really under control. Fingers crossed, he looked healthy. That's a massive thing for sorry, because only 3 or 4 years ago that London City Royals signed him, and he was there. He was literally the centerpiece. He was a big name signing, and you don't lose that, Buttrick, obviously, I've been pretty skeptical about him. I still am a little bit skeptical about him, but he did what he's meant to do in this game, so you have to give him credit for that.
Let's go to Friday. Bristol Flyers 67, Sheffield Sharks 65. Usual low-scoring game between these two teams at the Wise Arena. Green with a couple of early fouls. Sharks with 9 first quarter turnovers, 13-9. There wasn't much in the way of offense.
Yeah, and obviously Sheffield, particularly on the road, Sheffield's 5th road game in a row, so they're probably getting a little bit road weary, you have to say, at that point. And they do shoot a fairly wide, by a fairly wide margin, probably more long twos than any team in the league, I would think. Bristol have been up and down. The big thing about this game was, the Leicester game, Lucas was awful. You couldn't win against probably any team in the league if your point guard is playing at that. And he came out first play of the game straight at the basket. It's almost like you could say, you're looking for a reaction from a player, and his mind, it's almost like his mind had been cleared. Now, a coach, and it's not me, it's the coach has sat there, no doubt they've broken the game down with him and said, you just can't be a guy who just stands there and tries to pass it to him or tries to pass it to him. We need you to make plays. And the first thing he did was he made a play. So I thought that was big because how young rookie American point guards balance the scoring and the facilitating in a new team in a new country is hard, and just being a facilitator won't cut it. That's not what you're here for, So that was fun. Sheffield played they'd been on one bus trip too many.
The stat I have for them is in the first 13 minutes they had 4 points in the half court.
And Coke obviously has Green defending him, so he's a big body, so it's a little bit more difficult for him to get to the rim. Ramsey, ever since the first game, has kind of struggled to get his own offense. I think did he start Stewart in this game? I think Stewart might have started in this game.
I haven't got the starters.
But he's trying to get some offense in relation to that. But no, I mean, that's Sheffield. They're a team whereby if they have if they're on a bit of a roll, because they're getting a decent look every single time, they can get comfortable and confident. But if they're not, basket sometimes gets very small for them. And they don't get that many, because of the way they space, they don't get that many offensive rebounds, and they don't get many fast break points. So you need your half court to be good, because that's how you're trying to beat teams.
But what they don't do in that situation is let a team get away from them generally. Bristol did lead by 12 at one stage, but the second half was essentially trading scores. Sheffield did for a moment or two get in front, but most of the time it was sort of 1 to 6 points for Bristol in terms of the lead. Should we get to the end and go through it? So 1:13 to go. Sheffield missed 2 3-pointers, but they did get 2 offensive rebounds on this occasion. And then Pipkins with a mid-range shot makes it 63-62. Other end of the floor, talking about Lucas making a play, a ridiculous finish for the M1 that he got with 58 seconds to go, 66-60.
Yeah, he's quite acrobatic going to his right. He seems to have this ability to deviate off course, going to his right and still finish, almost kind of Fletcher-esque going left. You know what I mean? Just move his body in the air.
47.9, Eichel Rock again playing well. Another good game from him. 3-point shot, 66-65.
Basically tried to make every play at the end of this game.
He did. The other end of the floor, Lucas slipped and then got called for a travel on a spin. So Sheffield got the ball back. Timeout called no advance because there's 28.8 to go. Rock putting it on the floor. Tough mid-range this time. Good defense by the Flyers, I thought, and they got a defensive
that's
rebound.
Probably the one part of his game that we haven't seen yet. The mid-range, and he's clearly a guy who's used to having the ball in his hands and is willing to take responsibility, which is really good for his development. As I say, a little Watson Gale, like different type of player, obviously. But what he's shown in all the games so far is, that he's very, very comfortable with his feet set from the 3-point line, and he shoots it like he knows it's going in, and they all kind of go in the same way, which might sound a bit weird if you're a fan, but basically his trajectory is pretty solid. Every single shot's about the same, which is what you need, that kind of repetition. But yeah, he's still not in the greatest shape. But yeah, wasn't able to finish.
10 seconds to go, 10.5 seconds. Green 1 for 2 from the free throw line. Allen fouled out at that point. I think that was the point that Ramsey came back, having gone out earlier. I forget what he did. He got injured in some way and went out and then came back only for the last few seconds. Sheffield then came down, missed, out of bounds possession. And then Pipkins stepping underneath, falling over. He misses. Rock got the rebound, but he was kind of underneath the rim and him falling over as well, and he couldn't force it home, and Bristol win.
It's kind of a metaphor for Sheffield's game, the game that Sheffield played, really. They didn't really get a clean look. Rock is probably 6'4", 6'5", so he got himself in good offensive position, but he never really got two hands on the basketball. And yeah, Bristol just scrapped one out, basically.
Lucas, 16 points, 5 rebounds. Thomas Edwards, 13 points, the only 2 in double figures. 37% field goal, 19 offensive rebounds, 13 second chance points. Pipkins, 13 points, 5 assists. Rock, 12. They were the only 2 in double figures for Sheffield, who 39%, but only 10 offensive rebounds and only 4 second chance points.
Yeah, it's a big win for Bristol because didn't have Jacob. Jacob's really important to them, and it was Lucas who stepped up to give them just enough offense. I mean, 67 at home is going to be a struggle to win. But they just got enough offense, and they benefited, as I say, from Sheffield not enjoying playing first halves in the West Country.
So let's go to Newcastle. Eagles 85, Leicester Riders 92. I think this was the first domestic game that Defoe played this season. Yeah. And before I get started, actually, there was something you said last year I was reminded of in this game. Taj Green swinging on the rings beyond what is allowed in the rules.
I've got something. Yeah, I think Green.
There was a couple in this game that I thought, you're not really supposed to do that.
Well, yeah, it's one of those calls that's gone out of the game, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't call. I mean, I think possibly because the rings of the technology is better now.
Yeah. In the old days, you might break the backboard if you hung on.
Bringing the backboard, and in the old days, you break the backboard, you lose at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Fans go home, and now I think technology is better. But no, I mean, there's things to be said about him at the moment, and about the whole Newcastle kind of mentality at the moment. But no, I'm not against the ref blowing that every so often if they think it's unnecessary showboating, provided that the ref blows the same one when someone dunks on somebody and taps their head.
Yeah, well, there's that thing of the celebration, isn't there, as to where it goes.
And or when you come down and you land and you stretch. In fact, it's a major bugbear. I'm going to let it get off my chest now, as well. Watching all the games, I'm fed up of watching people do what they do and celebrate what they do. All right. Every time somebody makes a 3-point shooter makes a 3, they're waving their arms and 3, or make some 3-point sign. Every time somebody dunks, you got to come down, you got to flex or tap your head or something like that. And it's like, that's not what winners do. I'm sorry, I'm a bit old fashioned on this. You're wasting your energy. You're basically ruffling up the opposition. You're causing an issue. I watched Leonard Stewart, and you watched Leonard Stewart. He played for us, obviously, and you watched him for years. He used to dunk on everybody, one-handed, but he just turned around and chopped back down the other end because he knew his next job was to get back and play defense and block shots. And it's a generational thing, and I get that, and it's old thing. If you, but I'm not having a 3-point shootout, and there's a few of them out there. The Plymouth Taylor Johnson at Plymouth, every time he makes a 3, it's like hands are. It's like, No, that's your job. That's your job. It's like
you're sounding a bit Belichick there in your hoodie.
Yeah, it's like me doing
your job.
Yeah, exactly. It's like me walking in the court and doing a lap of honor because someone got a conditional discharge. No, I'm not high. It just doesn't work like that. And Green is a big part of that because there's too much noise around Green at the moment. And I said after the first 2 games of the season, I honestly thought maybe he cracked it because I thought his first 2 games was under control, was sound, was solid, effective, and you've got people talking about him as being potential MVP. And the last 2 or 3 games, I'm afraid he's kind of reverted back to look at me a little bit. But anyway, moving on.
Do you need to just check out that window behind you to make sure there's nobody on your lawn outside that you need to get off? So first half they were trading scores. I wasn't expecting
I have to get
that.
the shotgun first.
I wasn't expecting that. Trading scores in the first half, and then Leicester had a 13-2 run just before halftime to lead 33-40.
Yeah, it was. It was teams going up and down a little bit. Leicester again start, playing those. They've changed their kind of substitutions, and they're playing their those 5 young American starters together so they can get some rhythm as a group, which is I think smart. Newcastle still experimenting a little bit. Austin's in the starting lineup now. McGill's on the bench. Whitfield starting, and in this game it was Green and Del Pesh. I thought over the course of the game, I thought Leicester's offense was, and I watched this on the TV because I was away, so I wasn't in the arena. I thought Leicester's offense was a little bit sharper than Newcastle's. I thought Newcastle were not bailed out, but they were having to make more individual plays. Jordan Johnson again, basically at times took it upon himself to carry the team. On top of that, Leicester's defense is kind of a little bit vulnerable at the rim, probably you would say. So that meant that there's a lot of kind of head down from Newcastle to get to the rim, but there wasn't as much spacing. And I thought the spacing from Leicester was really, really good. And the advantage that they have is that they have a true league vet coming in to run what is the second unit. This was a game that was played by basically a bunch of new players. Because for Leicester, I think Walker played a minute, Bowman played 4 minutes, he was minus 14, and then there's McKenzie, and that was about it. For Newcastle, there was Defoe, who was basically the only player, and he played about 10 minutes. And that was it. So it was basically two new teams who've been put together in this game. And I thought Leicester's offense was just a little bit more in sync and a little bit simpler than Newcastle's. I thought that they had guys doing what they're really used to be doing. Whereas for instance, with Newcastle, with Green, I wasn't sure whether he was spacing or whether he was crashing. What I mean by crashing is, was he going to be attacking the offensive rebounds? Well, if he attacks the offensive glass and Del Pesh is in the game and Austin's attacking the rim, you haven't got much space. So Newcastle aren't getting many threes. Newcastle have made as many threes in 5 games as Cheshire did in the first game of the season. And part of that is because their spacing is not as pristine as Leicester's is, and Leicester's obviously is critical, and the guy who's critical to that is Thomas. Thomas is the guy who's spacing them out and making shots, and then Idowu, who comes in and makes shots as well. So that meant that even though Newcastle did a pretty decent job on Pinson, there were other guys who were getting good looks, and as I say, they have McKenzie who can come in and run the second unit and make the plays that he needs. So overall, it was a good game. It really was. Quite a good game.
On the subject of Leicester shooting, they moved 10 points ahead, 49-59 on an Asbury 3. To that point, they'd been 2 of 11 from 3, but they made 5 of their last 8 in the game. Eagles tied at 67-67 beginning of the fourth quarter. It was still level at 78 with 3:18 to go, and then 3 minutes to go. Holmes, sort of out of nothing, hit a big 3, 78-81. It didn't look like that shot was going up until it went up.
Yeah, that was actually that one. Overall, I don't think Newcastle's defense is anywhere where it needs to be. If I'm honest, I watched probably them a little bit more carefully than I watch other teams, but defensively, I think they've got more. Despite the shooting issues, I think they've got more issues defensively than offensively. But defensively, Josh Ward-Hibbert has probably been their best defender.
Yeah,
and he was defending Holmes, and he took him he made him push the ball down to the triple threat. He took away the first look, and he just rose up and made a really, really tough shot. Now, it's probably a bit early in the season to know if that's a shot he's going to make regularly. I haven't seen him make that shot yet, but he made it this time.
But he made it there.
So on the scouting report, you wouldn't criticize that. That's kind of a tough look, because the scouting report on him is don't let him get his shoulder passes and get you to the rim. Now, it might be in 6 weeks' time, after he's made 3 or 4 of them, that scouting report has to change. But that wasn't the play that cracked the game.
No. Adowu with a big block after a good defensive play by McKenzie, because Austin was in the fast break and we've seen him normally get to the rim there, but McKenzie stopped him and forced back out.
That's what I mean about the spacing, though. There was no no ability to throw it to the corner or to draw a man and kick it out. It was, Newcastle were very much head down to the rim, and that works as long as the opposition are deciding that they're not going to meet you at the rim, but eventually they're going to meet you there and they're going to make you do something different. And they didn't. 155.
Johnson goes 1 for 2 from the free throw line to make it 79-81, and then 144 to go. Adowu hits a 3, 79-84.
That was the game. That shot actually really frustrated me watching it, because Newcastle were big. Delpesh was in the game and he was guarding Adowu, and that's Adowu's shot. I don't care. It's only 5 games in. You've seen enough. He made 4 in his first game. He made off 3 or 4 straight in a row. That he's a catch and shoot guy, and he's another guy who it's back of the rim and down. Or as I understand, it's called in the NBA vernacular a Brad, back rim and down.
Well, there you go.
And he hit it. And the Eagles have had big difficulties defending stretch 5s. And I think their matchup in having Delpesh. And Delpesh was working at the other end. He was getting the offensive rebounds. He was getting some tip-ins. Yeah. But he hasn't shown to me that he's capable of defending anybody who can shoot it from 28 feet at the moment in the games that I've seen, that I've been watching. And that was that was a simple pass. It wasn't like it was a complicated kind of a drag screen, or he away and deliberately pulled him out. He just wasn't where he needed to be to challenge that guy. You have to know your personnel. Now, he's been in the league 3 or 4 years. Scouting report is on Adowu is you've got to make him drive. He can shoot the shot, and he didn't do it. And that is the difference between winning and losing. That play was it. That was a game. That was a 5. At that point, that was the game. Yeah. And it was an easily defendable play. If you have an understanding of who you're guarding and why you're guarding them, you have to make them do something different. And that's why Newcastle's defense. I am an educated eye watching it. I get that, and lots of people won't be, but I see it far more than I should in the defensive attentions of most teams. But at the moment with Newcastle, they're giving up far too many shots to shooters that they shouldn't be giving up.
2 big plays in the space of 15 seconds for him. Delpesh did get a tip in after that, but then Holmes in transition scored an and 1 back to 6, and that was basically that.
Yeah.
Johnson, 22 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Green, 17.7 rebounds. Austin, 13 points and 5 rebounds. They shot 45% field goals and 4 of 16 from 3. To your point, 16 is not a big number anymore, really.
No, it's really not. And they're not getting them because they're not getting to their spots, and the ball isn't moving from there, which means that you end up having to make lots of plays at the rim. And as I say, Green's a big part of that, because your spacing all comes down to your 4. And Green last year, he played a lot of the 5 at Manchester, whereby Lee was a spacer and Green could just go and fight and rebound. And he's having to play a lot of the 4 at Newcastle. He's not really played the 5 because they've got Neighbour, Defoe, and now Defoe and Delpesh. And, he has to be a lot more particular in his game as to when he crashes, when they run plays to get him the ball around the basket, so he can be effective both on the offensive boards, but also create space for the others. Because at the moment, Jordan, up until certainly Sunday, Jordan Johnson's been putting them on his shoulders.
Yeah,
they've also been getting, basically nothing out of McGill. He's I think shooting 9% from 3, 1 of 11, and he can,
We touched on last week the Plymouth when he started. He was his 3-point shooting was, I don't know if it was 9%, but it was pretty low in the early stages.
Well, his general play was pretty low. Where the hype was, where the hype was coming from. But you're getting to the point now whereby it's you're 5-6 games in now. And for everybody, and I don't say this apropos of him or anybody, you're getting to that 60-day mark in the league now. 60-day mark, for those who don't know, is generally the day when most contracts become guaranteed for the season. So clubs have to stick or twist and make decisions on players whether they think they've got enough and what they need. So, and it's not Newcastle. It's not just Newcastle. It's some of the other teams as well. And just Sheffield have already changed somebody as well. So the urgency needs to be there, and I don't see. I saw a lot more urgency in pre-season defensively with the Eagles than I do now. I don't know if they're getting a bit worn down, but they shouldn't be. It's only 4 weeks in.
Yeah.
So they've got a few steps to go. Leicester, really good win for them. Not convinced with their interior defense. I like their offense. I like the fact that all the rookies know their roles and they're playing in a system which kind of fits them. They've got the point guard, they've got the shooter, they got Holmes at the small forward, they got the space out, Trayvon Wright type and Thomas, and they got and Brady, not Brady, Bridges, sorry. I'm thinking of Breon Brady there, sorry. Bridges, who finishes around the rim. So, all those pieces fit. For them, it's just going to be consistency. And also, are they going to be able to continue to defend well enough against the teams who are going to be a little bit more together? So, I'm looking forward to seeing Sheffield play Leicester. That's going to be a really interesting clash to see, we'll see what comes out of that. I don't know when they play them.
I don't know. I don't have the schedule, so I don't know. Thomas, 17.7 rebounds. Mackenzie, 16 points. Bridges, 6 of 6 for 15 points. Yeah. Holmes, 15 and 6 rebounds. So, welcome to this week's episode of Surrey lose a heartbreaker at Surrey Sports Park. Surrey Scorchers 101, Cheshire Phoenix 103. No Reyer, who was player of the month for September, and Ben Thomas was coach of the month as well. Robinson back after that little ankle tweak at Caledonia, although he then hobbled out after 3.5 minutes. He did come back in, but he's obviously having some sorts of issues. Surrey starting well. Offense was really flowing in this game early on for them. They got 17-10 ahead.
Yeah, it was kind of a very what's the best way of putting it? Loose game. As I say, Cheshire or Bizarro, they're just playing. They're just playing and they're getting the ball wherever they want. They're taking their shots and attacking. And Surrey, I think, benefited from that a little bit because it kind of sped them up a little bit. And Surrey have guys who can put the ball in the basket. What they don't have is people who are making 3, 4, 5, 6 winning plays consecutively, which means that they struggle. By the way, Quinn Cooper is JJ Redick BBL. I am sorry, like he just got the mannerisms, the catch and kind of throw it at the basket wherever you're facing, whatever, the ability, the belief that he can make any shot he catches for, just has the same mannerisms.
On the subject of him, he hit threes to end the quarter and then to start the second quarter, and they were up 11, 36-25, but Cheshire immediately came back. Rideau helped them to 13 of the next 14 points, and they were 1 point up, 37-38.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, Cooper's probably the 9th man, yet he'd be the first man on my scouting report. Because the first guy you take away is the guy who's doing one thing. If you can do one thing, you take that away. You do everything you can because you know that he's going to come in the game. He's going to put them up anyway. That's what he does. And it doesn't mean he's not overly athletic. He's not an overly great ball handler, but he can shoot. Right? Okay, wait and let him shoot. And teams, there's a tendency, I think, for that to get lost a little bit nowadays. That, he makes a couple. Okay, he's made a couple. No, you got to know that before you go in. But yeah, and then Rideau took over this game. And Rideau, the change in Rideau from game 1 to game 5 is just it's like, whoa, what's happened here? Is this the same guy? It frustrated me for Surrey because when Rye's not playing, that gives you a shot. That has to give you. You're at home, that has to give you a shot of beating Cheshire. Of all the teams in the league, Cheshire without Rye would be one you would look at and think, well, we've got a good shot of beating this team at home, right? Early season. Okay. How do you beat this team without Reyer? Well, you've got to handle Rideau because Rideau is going to have the ball in his hands. Holden's going to have the ball a little bit, but primarily it's going to be Rideau. And Rideau played all 40 minutes. And they didn't. they didn't handle him at any point. In fact, their defense got kind of considerably worse as the game went on, even when he was airballing threes in the fourth quarter, but he was standing there all on his own shooting them, and the frustration for Lloyd, and he said it afterwards in the game, will be if you give it 101 points at home against Cheshire playing that way, when basically they've got one guy creating shots. The other guys are all catching and finishing, and shooting. But they've got one guy who's a focal point and getting the ball where it needs to go. And when you've got as many guards as Surrey have got, and Riddle's not, to be fair, let's be honest, he wasn't in great shape 3 weeks ago, right? And he's playing 40 minutes, then you're thinking we are harassing him all over the court. And we are making him turn and wearing him down. And that just did not happen in this game. And credit to Cheshire, they know who they are. And, Maceo Jack, breakout.
So late third quarter, they had a 16-2 run. Cheshire. Jack was hitting threes. Rideau was getting to the basket, 64-77. Now, I kid you not, and it sounds cliche, but I was sitting there, and I have the text to prove it, expecting Surrey to get back in the game to find a way to lose it at the death, and they did.
They don't quit.
Yeah.
They don't quit.
Cooper and Steele hit threes. They got it down to 84-86 early in the third quarter. There's quite a bit to go through. Should we jump to the end? So 45 seconds to go. Steele banks a three, 98-101, and then
they were down. They were down, I think 9 at one point, weren't they? They made another three before that.
Steele, I think Steele made both of them, didn't he?
Yeah.
There's an out of bounds play. Here we go, Rob. There's an out of bounds play. Cheshire have 1 second on the shot clock. It's 21.7 seconds on the clock. Shagwa, it is inbound to Shagwa. He turns around, hits it, makes it 98-83. I don't know if you saw it. I had a long Twitter interaction with Rob Hunt about whether that was a violation or not. So what happens is the referee, instead of handing the player the ball, walked back a little bit and bounces it to Rideau, I think it was inbounding the ball, but he never quite caught it, and he sort of dropped it. The ball bounced on the line, and there's that interesting thing of if the line is out of bounds in court, is it in bounds? But I do think it touched some of the. I think
it was in court
play. It did touch some of the in court, but then he picks it back up, passes Shagway, shoots. Now the rules, as Rob helpfully shared with us in this Twitter discussion that we had, would imply that that's a violation. So, but my pushback to him, well, no, sorry, it is. If the player inbounding the ball cannot touch the ball in court until somebody else in court has touched the ball and nobody else. So if it's bounced in court, then him picking it back up, A, is a violation, and B, is out of bounds anyway. So it'd be out of bounds if it wasn't a violation. The bit where Rob and I diverged on our belief of what happened was, I don't think that Rideau ever had the ball at his disposal. I think it's 17.2.1. It says the referee will put the ball at the player's disposal, and obviously they have to be slightly vague. They can't say put it in his hands, because they can put it on the floor and start counting, because therefore it's being at his disposal. So the question is, was it at his disposal? Now, my take is what the referee probably should have done was, when he dropped the ball, blow the whistle and say, hang on, I've not put that at your disposal properly. Let's do that again.
I agree.
Rather than calling a violation. Interestingly, the following day in Plymouth, the ball was at LVC Douche's disposal, i.e. it was in two hands. He dropped it, but it didn't bounce in court. It just bounced in the play, and he picked it out of bounds. He picked it back up. Now, in my view, he should still be allowed to inbound that, because it's not coming court, so it doesn't matter. But the referee the referee in that occasion blew the whistle and stopped the play and reset it, because obviously it's not a violation because it hasn't come in court. But I would imagine those two things are interlinked.
If he wants to stick the ball up his shirt behind the basket, fine. Behind the outer play, it's fine by me. He can do figures of 8 through his legs with all he wants, So I agree with you. I agree with you on both of them. And there's a comparison with the foul line thing. We've all been there when refs have thrown the ball to a foul shooter, and it's either slipped out of their hand or it's been a bit slippy and they've thrown it back to the ref. or they fumbled it and it's bounced and the ref's come and got it again and given it to him again. What struck me about that play, it gets lost in all the intricacies of the rules, and I get that. Yeah, the bottom line with being a referee, if something isn't right, you blow your whistle. Right? If something doesn't look right, particularly with the administration of the game, you blow your whistle. So as soon as he fumbled the ball, yes, the whistle should have been blown. Okay, no question at all. But what got me was there was 1 second on the shot clock.
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah,
I think Surrey were in the zone. I couldn't really see with it the way it was because Hunt was in the middle of it was in the middle, and the guy who was next to Siauliai was Gooden.
Yeah.
Now, given that if now there's 3 seconds left or 4 seconds left, that's fine because Siauliai is going to go and set a screen. They're going to throw it to somebody else. But with 1 second left, you're going to give a guy who's got 23 points in the game, or 25 points, who's been making jump shots for fun. You're going to let the point guard hand in the ball and turn around and shoot over a guy who's a foot smaller than him. I look at that before I look at any of the stuff as to whether it's a violation. I know.
Now, to be fair to Rob, he did say that isn't why we lost the game, but the referee should get it right, and I agree with him on that.
I do. I think there was a point in that game as well whereby I think there was a technical called and Surrey had the ball and Surrey didn't get the ball back either. And the refs gave it the wrong way.
I was watching this game very quickly because I come home from the football and was 40 minutes behind, so was trying to catch up. So I might have missed that bit.
But also something happened in the Bristol Plymouth game a bit like that as well, which I'll talk about later. But I thought you can't give that shot up. You can't just let him hand it to a guy who's 6'11", who's got 25 points and shoot over someone who's 6 foot tall. So to that degree, they got what they deserved. And so they didn't.
So the reason if you haven't seen the game, the reason we spent a long time talking about whether this basket should have counted or not is yet to come. So Steele then hits a 3 with 12 seconds left. So it's 101-103. The problem for Surrey is they haven't committed a single foul in the quarter. And they're obviously now into fouling territory. So they have to foul 5 times to send Cheshire to the free throw line. So they foul 4 times, by which point the clock has gone down to 5.8 seconds.
That's like back in the 1980s, wasn't it? You remember when you could choose whether
just take a sideline ball,
and it went on forever, and on the halfway line was the most memorable thing about the whole game. But anyway, go on.
And then Rideau gets confused with, I forget who, somebody made a movement but then cut back the other way, and he threw it there. It might have been White, and he threw it where he thought he was going, which comes straight to Cooper at the half court, who's got 5.8 seconds just to run it back and float in a shot to tie the game. And he runs it in. He gets to, I don't know, 6 feet, 7 feet, floats it in, misses.
Yeah, he's been better pulling up at the 3-point line. No, the few things about that. Firstly, if you're going to force the steal, forcing it on the, forcing it on the 5th possession is always a good one.
Yeah.
Interestingly, they were using the centre as kind of their get out of jail card. So Lloyd actually subbed out Hunt and put somebody who was a bit quicker in to guard him, to try and take that option away as well. And eventually the pressure made do. They got the steal, they had the opportunity. Hey, look, if that had been us at Surrey Sports Park, that would have bounced 6 foot in the air and gone in. Because it happened to me about 3 times. Anthony literally making a 3-point shot for like 3rd time in his career to tie a game off an offensive rebound. Quincy Taylor flew at money. Don't worry. That place has got. We were the only team that ever seemed to lose close games at Surrey. But could have bounced up in the end, gone in. At the end, he made the play. You can't knock a guy for making a play, attacking the rim, doing what he's meant to do, and it just didn't go in. But
very on brand.
Very on brand. It was interesting. The interesting thing was that he was part of the lineup down the stretch. He went with the shooting lineup down the stretch. It wasn't Mohammed, it wasn't Wang, it wasn't really Jameson. He put as many shooters on as he could because that was a way of getting back into the game. They're just, I don't know what it is. I'm giving up on kind of picking a problem for Surrey, because it just seems to be little things every week which get in the way.
Rideau, by the way, Rideau was fouled with 0.6 seconds to go and missed both free throws, but the second one hit the back ring and came all the way to the foul line to him.
He got an offensive rebound, which is a hell of a way of padding your stats at the end of the game. Just in case you do that one for a triple-double. Can you imagine?
Steele with 20 points, 4 of 6 from 3. Lawrence 17, Gooden 14, Wang 14, 7 and 5. They were 14 of 29 from 3.
And still lost. And 30, that's as many as Newcastle made all season, basically. And 30, and 32 minutes for Steele, which means that he might be the guy that Lloyd's going to use as his kind of focal point, or his centrifugal force. They play around him. You have to have somebody. With Manchester at the moment, it's Jamel Anderson. With trying to think, with Leicester, it's probably McKenzie, even though he's not starting. You have to have that somebody who's right in the mix. So maybe he's going to be it.
Rideau 27.6 rebounds, 12 assists, 9 fouls drawn as well was the other stat.
Couldn't guard him, and that means they couldn't guard him, and the way he's a big guard. He can shoot it well enough to keep you honest. He gets his shoulders past you. He's wide. You probably got to send him left, I think, but he's quite tricky in getting way back. But more than anything, he was in control of the game, and they never discomforted him, and that was a problem. The other guy was obviously Cheshire without Reyer playing, who stepped up and really showed his game.
25.7 rebounds for him, and Jack had 26 points and 15 rebounds.
Yeah, well, he's just playing. He's just balling.
So let's come to Sunday. And I drew the short straw with the 2 blowout games this week. Sheffield Sharks 86, Newcastle Eagles 56. Obviously, second new venue of the week. The Cannon Medical Arena being open for the Sharks looks very nice. Perfect storm, really, for the home win. New venue, full house. Eagles on their 3rd game of the week, having travelled to Lithuania and back, and Sheffield scored the first 9 points of the game, and I don't want to say it was done then, but it was basically done then.
It wasn't far off done. I mean, Newcastle may put a little kind of semi-run back in the first quarter, but nothing which got them closer than probably 4 or 5, and after that it just extended and extended. I think you're probably 75% right and 25% kind to Newcastle, I think. Firstly, in addition to everything I said about Caledonia, the same for Sheffield. The arena, great. The fact that they're there, the fact that they've got a base, the fact that they've managed to find it, they've been doing it for 30 years, Sheffield, and that they've managed to put it together and get everybody there, then that's fantastic. It's just brilliant. It's basically, putting us in a situation where there's absolutely no reason why we're not going to have a viable competition for 10 years, 15 years time. And we've never always said that about British basketball. But the more these venues that we get, the more businesses that are required or dependent upon having these venues, the more stable our game becomes, the better, the more attractive it becomes, the more supporters you'll get there, because, from my experience, Newcastle get far more fans in their shiny new venue than we did when we were beating everybody.
And the other thing is that it generates income on other days of the week.
Absolutely, the whole
thousands of pints drank at the Morningside Arena last week had nothing to do with basketball.
Yes, absolutely, 180. I don't even. Rob scored that many. So it's great. So congrats for that. Actually, that was my one hope with the game, that because it was a showpiece, that Newcastle might kind of kick it out of their legs. Because it was a showpiece, because it was a first game. But they're not together enough at the moment to do that, to be honest. And the first thing, when your legs aren't there, your shooting goals. They haven't been shooting the ball particularly well. They shot the ball appallingly in this game.
They were terrible shooting.
They had some decent looks, and Johnson struggled a little bit. He had 50 points in the last 2 games. I think he'd been under the weather as well, to be honest. And when he kind of wasn't able to knock down shots early, then the whole thing just kind of fell away. And Sheffield are a really good defensive team, so that is a perfect storm. 3 games, lots of travel, the new venue, the big crowd, the full house, the team that's ready for it, and a really good defensive
The other
team.
thing I thought about Sheffield is you could see that every player wanted to be, this was a big game, so they wanted to show out and show that they were contributing to it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a monumental game. In 3 weeks' time, it won't seem like that at all. But in the moment, it does. And for Newcastle, it wasn't a monumental game, and it showed. For a team that got on a plane on Monday, and has been basically traveling around and playing basketball ever since, and aren't at this point ready for that. They're not good enough for that at the moment. What I will say, and I don't give them an absolute pass because, what I said about, for instance, and I'm not picking on him, but that shot that Adowo gave up, that Delpesh gave up to Adowo, first quarter of this game, he's guarding Adekoya. And Adekoya literally takes one dribble and just steps into a shot. Delpesh's back in the paint. That's Adekoya. That's not fit. That's not because you can't jump or because you're tired. And they're going to have to get
and also you can't say, well, I haven't played against him before either.
Exactly. It's that's inexcusable. These are mental mistakes that you can't make. And there was some with other shots. At one point, Darius went out and got out really quickly to Parker Stewart in the corner. He got out to him, he rotated, he was there, and then he stopped. And Parker Stewart's the guy who's just shooting it from anywhere and shooting it from the triple threat. And he stopped, he made the shot instead of running him off and making him drive, making him do something. And on top of that, the vibe about the Eagles was stuck in my throat a bit for what they should be more competitive than they were. That said, Sheffield got confident, knocked down some shots, and then Newcastle were a step slow defensively. I think their offensive struggles impacted their defense. I'm being kind, probably, but if I look at I'm talking a bit about Newcastle here, but if I look at the 3 games they played, Siauliai shot 74% from 2 points. Leicester shot 55% and like 39. Sheffield shot 51%, 50 and 30 something. You aren't going to win many games. Once one game, it's fine. It can happen. You can get, but if this is consistently what's happening, that you're not getting stops, that's because you're not pulling for each other, or you're not doing the things you need to do, or you're not being smart enough in the way that you're defending people.
43% from 3 as well, Sheffield.
43% from 3. That's just unsustainable. So that, I've been all over the message boards in Newcastle. Oh, they can't shoot. They can't do this. They can't do that. They need to play defense. That's what they need to do. They need to focus in on the things that matter in relation to guarding people, because at the moment they ain't doing that. The couple, as I say, Ward, Hibbert, Whitfield, and Austin's always active, but I'm not seeing anything in relation to taking charges or anything like that. And that's hard because, as I say, it's 3 games, 5 days. It is a schedule loss. The chances of winning that game were minimal, particularly given that they'd already beaten Sheffield, so Sheffield were coming back at them. But they shouldn't have lost in that way. It was very comfortable and a perfect.
I can't remember the exact stat, but I think it's the biggest win for Sheffield against Newcastle in Sheffield since 95, I think it was. 94 it might have been. It was the first year anyway. And they've now won the first home game in every venue they've played, Sheffield, as well. Which is a nice little
thing. What is that before the game? I could have got the Bet365 out.
Betting with Dave.
Against I couldn't.
Nichols with 14, Ramsey, Cook, Eitelrock with 13 each. We've talked about the shooting.
Sorry, Dan, but you don't get to be the player of the game by making 3 threes and a 30-point plot in the fourth quarter.
It was a tough pick.
It was a tough
pick.
It might have been a tough pick, but you've got Bennett Cook who came out and set the tone in that game. You got Pipkins who set the tone that. You've got a few of those guys who set the tone in that game. The guy who comes in and makes a few threes when they're up by 30. Nah, not for me. Sorry.
Recency bias. Austin, 14 points and 8 rebounds to Foe 12. 30% field goal shooting. Newcastle, 3 of 22 from 3. Let's go to London. London Lions 94, Manchester Giants 91. Obviously, I was doing the other 2 games, so I watched the first half of this, but I've only had a chance to watch back the last couple of minutes of the second half. No Coach Bojic for this game. I believe he was ill. So Robert Youngblood taking over. But just to stick it to you assistant coaches' winnings, Youngblood wasn't even named on the live stats. He's standing up in front. His name's not even on the live stats.
I don't remember ever being involved in a game with Robert Youngblood where I wasn't worried there was a fight going to break out. So I don't think I ever dared speak to Robert. I think Robert was one of those guys that you would walk around. I'm sure he's a lovely guy, but certainly, he was probably one of the last children of the 90s. I would say, probably him, Windlass, Fab.
Mike New with the elbows.
Mike New. I like Mike New. Mike New played for the Eagles. But Windlass, Mike New, Fab, Youngblood, those guys who were kind of the last guys to get their British passports before the rules changed. They stayed around for a bit longer. And Rob Youngblood, for those who don't know, he was when he came into the league, he was an absolute leap. He was 6'9". He dunked everything. He could shoot. He had attitude. He was one of Billy Mims's poster children.
I remember him doing an interview where London Towers were ahead of them in the league and lost a random game to somebody, and he did an interview, said that was all we needed, we're now going to win all our remaining games. There were 18 games left. He's like, we're gonna win the league now, we just needed them to drop one and now we're gonna do it. And they won 17 of their last 18 and won the league.
And now we don't even have a league yet.
Wow.
Anyway, and so he's graduated. Good for him to doing that. So you don't get to be involved in these organizations if you don't know what you're talking about. If you don't add value, you have to add value. London aren't carrying anybody. But that said, that's a tough job because if you're coaching a game like that, you're in an absolute no-win
lose. I remember when
40 2 weeks ago.
I remember when Rob Paternostro's daughter was born. He wasn't at the game against, I think it was Glasgow, and Kevin Cadle, the late great Kevin Cadle, was there selling his book, and he came up and said, "Rob looks like a genius now, doesn't he? Because Glasgow won by 20, and he was one of them. It was like,
you've got to be. The very first game I ever coached without Fab being there was at London Capital in front of 20 people. London Capital hadn't won a game all season. If you lose that game, then who's this idiot? So it is a different vibe. And that game, a home game against a team you've beaten by 40. 2 weeks ago, with all the talent that you've got on your bench, there's nothing that can go right in that game.
No. So Sandy was in the starting lineup for this. London scored the first 10 points, 5 each for Siauliai and Morgan, and it looks like they're going to run riot like they did in the last game. So I think that made it even worse, because if they had those sorts of thoughts in the back of their mind, when you're 10-0 up, after a couple of minutes, they come to the front of the mind, don't they?
The first, it was. I've just watched this game back now before I came on. The first 4 defensive possessions by Manchester, I think, are the worst 4 defensive possessions I've ever seen to start a game. Go back and watch them. Just watch them. The first play is just a kind of a back screen at the top, and Matt Morgan runs around and catches the ball with nobody anywhere near him, shoots a floater. It's a goal 10 because they're late over. The second play, I think, is where a cross-court pass to Mo Soloade leaves him with about 18 feet of space, because his man has actually got 2 feet, not just in the key, but on the other side of the key, helping across, because he's worried that Sharma's going to screen roll. They looked awful for about 5 minutes, Manchester, and the 10-0. And then Harris made a couple of shots that got them going, which got them into the game, which was necessary. But then probably the last 2 minutes of the first quarter and the first 5 minutes of the second quarter, London, just to use the phrase, London started playing with their food. They started messing. They played very, very slack. It's tough because you're the assistant coach. You're not the guy who's giving these guys their minutes. So they can take a few liberties, but it's not quite the same as if your head coach is there, who's thinking about where you're going to be playing, who's going to play next week and the week after. And I thought they were still at 10, but that game, Manchester were ready to be put away in the first 5 minutes of the second quarter. And when they didn't do that, when your food sticks around, it comes back up.
Yeah.
They started getting going and they started playing with a bit of confidence. And there was quite a lot to like about Manchester after that, actually. Lawton, I quite like. They're rotating Lawton and Robertson, which is a passable centre combination. Jamel's playing the 40 minutes, so he's there. Harris stepped up, made some shots and plays. And Bussier started at the point guard. And we haven't really seen much of him. He came off the bench and, it's like I had to do a double take because I thought it was Cohen from last year. I don't like little right-handed kind of buzzing around guard, pulling up, making shots or making plays or penetrating and flying around. And that gave them, quite sufficient structure to then stay close when Nick Lewis pulled the Nick Lewis.
Yeah. So you basically just kept going from 10 back down, 10 back down sort of thing. And then, as you say, Nick Lewis making shots as is his want from not every game, but from time to time he goes mad.
To be honest, he made some. They were side, they were off the dribble, and he obviously used to play in London.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he knows people there, so he was doing a bit of talking with Olaseni. It got really interesting beginning of the fourth quarter because the first time I've seen Olaseni legitimately angry, playing like he was angry. He made a couple of plays. He got a technical, which he doesn't normally do. He was talking with Lewis at the foul shots. Lewis was talking to him. He's waving to Lewis after he made the shot, and just playing with a degree of force, which, you don't think of him. You think of him as being a cerebral center. He really kind of set a tone at the beginning of the fourth quarter, which I thought was interesting. He also has the best mustache since Kenny Nottage.
Kenny Nottage, you're going that far back, are you?
I'm talking about one that doesn't move. In amongst the kind of a guy who's not got a big afro or anything like that.
That's a top end BBL mustache, that Kenny Nottage. That's high praise indeed. That.
The only other guy I could think of was Colin Irish when he was kind of bald and mustache.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there's not been that many people who will have a mustache and be normal as opposed to having massive bouffant hair or whatever, stuff like that, like braids and stuff. They're fake mustaches. They don't count. Sorry, excuse me. They're fake mustaches. So not all of a sudden he was good, but Lewis kept making shots, but not quite enough shots.
No, and even in the last minute, they were up 10 with a minute to go, London, and then Harrison Anderson made some threes and got it down to 3. But
London were very undisciplined. Luke Nelson committed a ridiculous foul up 5 with 13 seconds to go, and he fouled the guy 80 feet from the basket.
Yeah.
That's just nuts. I mean, just crazy foul, and that's the kind of thing that can happen when the head coach isn't there. Because it's harder to be the assistant. You can't call guys out the same way. You can't hold them accountable the same way. They did, and Matt Morgan, of course, we can't forget Matt Morgan. He took over at the end. I mean, there are two speeds in this league at the moment. There's Normal and there's Matt Morgan. And he made shots that you need to make, and looked like he looks like he's having a ball. He looks like me, playing against the 8-year-olds in football training. It's great. You can drill past everybody and score. That type of 8-year-old girls, not boys. Not saying there's anything wrong with girls football, but who haven't played before. He just looks like he's at a different level.
And he led all scorers with 30 points. He was 11-11 from free throw line as well. Philip, 17 points, 8 rebounds. Olaseni, 15 points. Lewis, 6 of 11 for 3, 24 points and 7 assists. Harris, 4 of 6 from 3, 17 points. Anderson, 13. They were 12 of 28 from 3, Manchester. Let's go to the final game. Plymouth City Patriots, 63. Bristol Flyers, 92. Patriots came out flying in this one. Taylor Johnson, Dusha knocking down threes, Atwood scoring freely. They were 17-10 up, and everything was going smoothly for them.
Yeah. Wow, this game really kind of took me aback because I didn't know the score when I watched it back. I did know that Plymouth were up after the first quarter, and I thought it would be close. And wow, how much of it was Bristol? How much was Plymouth? Bristol, I thought, came together really well. Raoul Graham Bell giving them 8 of 11 for 19 points with that team. That's a massive thing. because somebody doesn't make easy shots. He made some tough shots.
Yeah, he did.
If you're 8 of 11 as opposed to 3 of 11, that's 10, 12 points, and just the energy that he played with. So that was massive. They don't have really that much. Green struggled a little bit early on. In fact, struggled a little bit through the game, desperately trying to get him going. But what kind of struck me most about this game was just a meltdown. So Plymouth melted down.
So they were up 9 early in the second quarter, and then Flyers had an 11-2 run to level the game at 28. Bristol took their first lead of the game at halftime, and I was sitting there wondering, how are Plymouth behind in this game? Because they started the game so well, but then the wheels just came off in the third quarter.
Was just off their offensive decision making.
Well, that was the thing. Flyers scored 16 consecutive points, and it was almost like every basket they scored equaled an even worse shot by Plymouth than the previous shot, which was terrible.
I mean, it was quick. There was no idea as to precisely where they were going to get a basket. It was almost like it was contagious. I can shoot this one, or whatever. You can shoot that one, and then they got ran on, so they didn't get back defensively, and they just looked a little bit bereft of on-court leadership, in reality. We did take me aback because I thought they turned a little bit of a corner.
Yeah, I did.
And that's a type of, because it's at home and it's a pavilion and it's Bristol and they've already beaten you once by 20 and you're up early. It's not like you haven't got your legs, or it's not like you can't get a shot to drop. You're in the game. The game's there. And for it just to go kind of so pear-shaped so quickly. And PJ called his timeouts, and the TV called their timeouts, and everybody called their timeouts, and the dog probably called the bloody timeout. But it's still, ultimately, nothing. So that I mean, if you looked at that game and the Newcastle game, the Sheffield Newcastle game, were the two games where you say, okay, guys, I'm not sure if these two teams are sustainable. With Newcastle, you get a little bit of mitigation because of their travel, obviously. With Plymouth, you don't really get that mitigation at all. So obviously Noble wasn't playing for them, but he hasn't played that much anyway.
No, he hasn't. No concussion protocol for him.
Yeah, so where do they go from there? It just really took me aback.
It did. Yeah, me as well. Yeah, no, it was the first game of the season. They were awful, and then they were progressively better as the games had gone on, and then they got their win that looked like was coming, and then this just looked like a regression back to the first game.
It was a manner of it, wasn't it? It was just the wheels just kind of. It was almost like you could see the wheels falling off in real time. And I know you watch a lot of games. I watch a lot of games. So it's not just a question of whether the shots go in or whether they don't go in. It's what happens after a couple haven't gone in. Where's the
Their
ball?
shot selection just got worse and worse and worse with every single one.
Desperate. So a lot of video to watch anyway for PJ. Bristol have to be delighted, to a tight win against Sheffield and then going down to Plymouth and winning. Raoul Graham-Bell looking back to something where he was.
And he's signed for the season now because the guy Cunningham, that's him, who hadn't played, is out for the year.
I still think Bristol have a little bit of an issue with Green. I'm not sure. Smith's actually almost looking more impactful than Green at the moment. But with Jacob and Ollison and Johnson, those three guys, they can shoot. They can drive, they can kick, they can pass. Is Lucas going to show up every week? If Lucas shows up every week, that becomes a tough unit. Then Lucas is the one we don't know about because he's probably the rookie from a slightly lesser program than Johnson, for instance. So we'll see.
Atwood,
great weekend for them.
Yeah, Atwood 30 points and 12 rebounds, 13 of 19 shooting, but only Taylor Johnson with 10 was the only other one in double figures. 6 of 33 from 3 and 38% overall shooting. Graham Bell, you mentioned his numbers, 8 for 11 for 19. Lucas, 18 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists.
Yeah, this was a game. This was a game where
17.
Someone got hit in the face or scratched in the eye. Yeah. Do you remember?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Well,
I forget who it was, but it was in front of the Flyers bench.
Yeah, I think it was a Plymouth guy. And Plymouth had got the offensive rebound.
Yeah. And, no, it was the other way around. Plymouth had the ball and they didn't stop the game. And then Plymouth took a shot and missed it. Bristol got the rebound and then they stopped the game. Normally you would stop it when you have the ball.
No, except Bristol didn't get the rebound. Plymouth got the rebound. They stopped it after they stopped. Yeah. Go back on it. They did because I watched it and I thought, hang on, there's something not right. Then I couldn't figure out what it was. It just didn't seem right. And it was actually Plymouth actually had the ball when they stopped it after not stopping it initially, and then they gave the ball to Bristol. So there was something mad going on. That was an interesting one though. You know, along the lines of you know, last week with Faulkner and the and when does a ref decide he's going to wipe the sweat off the ball?
Yeah.
You know, when is the ref meant to be stopping that? Stopping the game if somebody's down like that?
Yeah.
No, it should always be when the team with the ball is down.
Yeah.
That's it all the time, because when the team with the ball has it, when the team with the ball has a player who is down, it shouldn't be when the opposition is down, because otherwise players could just fly off the court at any point. You know, complain to be hell on. So I don't think they got that right. Actually, I thought they didn't get the detail of that right, and it's little stuff like that which kind of keeps us going, doesn't it?
Yeah. And keeps Rob trawling through the FIBA rules to explain.
Hey, education.
No, to be fair, I entirely agree with the point that he was making. I just disagree with the bit before that it was at his disposal. If it was at his disposal, then I agree with what entirely.
I just thought it was amazing. That was the only time they managed to disrupt video all night was when the ref threw him the ball.
Yeah. So that will do it for another week of basketball. We're going to be back Monday night again next week because I'm on the double header next Sunday as well. So
that's fine. It gives me more time to polish the one-liners on the kids.
There we go, and a bit more time for the basketball gods to listen down and see what they're going to throw our way next week.
I think from memory, Newcastle are playing London next Monday night.
Oh, are they?
The Monday night game.
Okay, so maybe
does that come into?
Yeah, are we talking delaying till Tuesday or something?
I don't know if the great Unwashed could handle that.
Could cope. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll slide it in, and it can be a sort of a little tasty we won't get it done in time, will we? As an appetizer.
Anyway,
we'll work something out, people. Just subscribe, and then it will just ping in wherever you want. That's probably the easiest bet, rather than waiting for us to come up with some sort of production meeting. So on that bombshell, we're going to wrap it up for this Monday night. Dave and I will be back at some point next week to do it all again. Have a great week, people, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.